This is Smithy.tv.
So this was one of the first interviews I did at the Niagara Falls Comic Con, and his name is Michael Rooth. And there's a funny story with him because I've actually hired him to do a commission work for me. I've always wanted a cover made of the Amazing Fantasy number 15 issue, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man ever in a comic book. But I asked if he could take out the criminal that Spider-Man is carrying in this cover and put Joey Jeremiah in for me, and he loved the idea, and so he's going to be working on that for me for the next little while. And Mike is a great artist. I was introduced to him by a friend of mine from Paradise Comics, Peter, and this is actually our first introduction at the con, and he told me a little bit about himself.
So I get Mike Rooth all the time, I get Mike Booth all the time. People look at that and I think, well, how do you pronounce the word tooth? You say, oh, I gotta go get my tooth drilled at the dentist. No, you say tooth because there's two O's. Anyway, I digress.
I digress, and I'm very angry about it. It's okay, people bastardize my name all the time. I get over it. Alright, whatever. Okay. Anytime?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here with Mike Rooth here at the Niagara Falls Comic Con, and we just met literally a few minutes ago. Peter over at Paradise Comics introduced me via email because I'm currently looking for someone to draw me an Amazing Fantasy 15 cover, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man, but I wanted under Spider-Man's arm, instead of there being a bad guy, I want it to be Joey Jeremiah, and I think Mike is kind of into that.
Awesome.
So, I just came to look at his portfolio here, which is phenomenal. I want you guys to just sort of see the quality and the kind of detail that Mike does in here. Now, Mike, how long roughly would it take you to do something of this sort of nature on this size?
Well, a lot of these were done for indie comics, so I kind of had a very short period of time to do them in. But I try to do commissions like this within a day or within a day and a half. Sometimes they happen much more quickly, but I like to give myself some time to digest the idea, digest the concept, whatever it is. If a writer sent me a character design or a script or whatever, I just gotta take my time. It's gotta live in my head for a while. But when it comes to doing the physical work, I try to do it within a day if I can.
Now, that was my next question was, how much of a final product do you see in your head before you even start, or is it a growing process as you're moving along?
Yeah, it definitely evolves while I'm working, but sometimes, in the case of my main kind of sign right there, that was a situation where I was asked by this British magazine to draw whatever I wanted for the cover of their new magazine, Weaponizer, and I said, well, anything I want? They said, anything you want. You very rarely get that kind of instruction, so it was a lot of freedom, and I just said, you're going to get something like a space Viking, it's going to be awesome, whatever. And so that one actually appeared in my head immediately. Like, it was all, the gas-powered javelin launcher was something that was just growing in my head, and I did a few kind of preliminary sketches, but I knew what it was going to be before I did. Like, it was already on the page. I just had to define it.
Well, I hope you don't mind me saying, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Lobo, like an older grandfather kind of.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, when I think about the comics that influenced me the most when I was kind of really into comics in like the mid 80s to mid 90s, Lobo was definitely a part of that. I mean, I always enjoyed Lobo. I love those kind of badass characters, the bounty hunter kind of characters. So yeah, there's a little bit of Lobo in that. Just a touch. And the Viking stuff, I mean, it's always real. Like I never leave home without the hammer and Thor. And in case I do, I've always got a backup, But it's always been very close to my heart. So it does escape into my work often. And when I've been given the chance to draw anything fresh or from myself or completely, carte blanche, it always kind of goes down that Norse kind of road, right? But yeah, I mean, Heavy Metal magazine was something I read a lot when I was a teen, and I read the kind of more badass characters. So yeah, it definitely appears in my work.
And when people meet you at a con, is that more what they're looking for you to draw for them? Is that style, or do they come up and say, "Can you do like a Batman?"
Oh yeah, I mean, I draw millions of Batmans and stuff, and I don't, I love it, but I really love it when someone comes to me with an original concept, an original character, or like a kid will come up to me with this book and like, here's my character, and can you draw it? And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I live for, because that's the real deal. When you got a small, young, old, whoever creator coming to you with their stuff, saying, I can't draw, I got the idea, can you help me? I mean, I live for those moments. That's what it's all about for me.
And for you, how much of a competitive industry must this be? Because there's such great artists throughout the con, and this is just a small sampling of the people that are in this industry.
Oh yeah.
How does one sort of make a name for themselves that makes them unique and different from other artists that are out there?
I think I'm still looking to answer that question myself. spent the first chunk of my career doing, like a big bulk of my career doing children's books. Like I did a lot of stuff for Scholastic Books and for Rubicon Publishing, and it was very tame Canadiana stuff, like a book about Johnny getting a new pair of skates, or a book about Johnny falling through the ice and having to call the St. Bernard to help him, and these kind of stuff. But I did millions of those kinds of jobs, and so, you know, when I lost that job, or when the job ended, I really just had to find a new thing, and I went right back to comics. I started hanging out at my local comic shop in Oakville, and they just gave me some space to draw, and I just started getting back in touch with what I wanted to do, because I had to feed my cats, I had to live, you know, and suddenly this gravy train of 6 years of drawing Scholastic Books just ended like that. Yeah. And when you're an artist in Canada, you know, you're a freelancer, you don't really have EI or things like that at your disposal, but suddenly, you know, shit hits the fan, right? So you gotta kind of make things happen. So I just sort of went back to what I love, and that's it. And, I think I may have digressed from the question.
No, not at all. I mean, I understand that sometimes you just gotta pay the rent, you gotta make money,
so,
and you do those gigs that just do that for you at that time.
I really consider myself an art mercenary. There's really no job that is out of range or out of reach. There's no character I can't draw. I mean, you know, I don't want to sound like a total jerk, but I'll draw anything. I'm basically just, I live for this. I live for this. This is how, I mean, I'm also a janitor. I keep my feet on the ground as being a janitor. So while I'm shoveling baby diapers and doing the garbage, I'm thinking about what I'm going to draw in the studio. So I mean, I'm always awake up here doing it. So.
One last thing, I know that a lot of the people that have been coming up to me this weekend, and a lot of people that I've watched go up to other celebrities, they just get their geek on. They're just totally into it. What makes you get your geek on? What brings out your inner nerd?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, it's getting to meet and appreciate in person some of the artists that I've looked up to my whole life. The tragedy about doing, you know, any kind of convention on this side of the table is that you very seldomly, if you're having a good weekend, get the chance to get up and walk around and meet people. So for me, it's seeing young creators, it's seeing what people are bringing that it's new stuff. You know, I mean. I mean, I'm an old Marvel boy at heart. I do love my old Marvel classics, Thor and Fantastic Four being the big ones there for me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a wrestling nerd. I'm a bit of a, you know, Viking, you know, fantasy art kind of nerd. And I'm not really sure. I think it's actually the experience of just interacting with people and drawing what people want me to draw. You know, that's what gets my geek on. It's just seeing the real emotion that people have attached to characters. Because I mean, I know when they kill off characters that I love, I feel it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
We'll wait for that.
The Q&A with Adam West upstairs at level 207. Tickets are available now for the cost of $20. Get an instant close up Q&A with Adam West starting in 20 minutes.
The nice thing is that you can edit it later. You're absolutely right about the geek is. So let me start that again. You're absolutely right about when you see someone that gets you excited, when you're in an environment that reminds you of your youth. I mean, it's okay to get your geek on now. It's actually quite hip to be a nerd these days.
It is, yeah.
Thanks to shows like Big Bang Theory and all these movies that are coming out. And I think it's fantastic that the young kids, the next generation of comic book fans and Marvel and DC fans, you have the parents that are encouraging them to go out and read their old books and get the T-shirts and all that stuff. Because I was saying this to Peter from Paradise Comics, you know, was the comic book industry dead? You know, and really, how did comic book stars survive those lean years?
Yeah.
But now it just seems like with the movies that are coming out these days, that it's just this resurgence of the old school characters that we grew up with. And like me, I'm out there looking for all those comic books that I wanted. Spider-Man 1, F-Man 1, all those things, you know. And being here this weekend has been a treat, not only because I've been meeting fans from my show early on in the 80s, but I'm now seeing people that I grew up with, and I'm getting my geek on and embracing it. And I think everybody should have that opportunity to come to a show like this, see what kind of beautiful artwork that's here, meet a celebrity or two. And you know what? The Niagara Falls Con is great because it's not overwhelming. It's not too big.
There's room to breathe, and the fans are awesome, and everyone's just so happy it came to Niagara Falls. And I mean, there's space in the alley. Like, it's just an awesome. You really get that full fan interaction thing here at this con, as opposed to other shows. Not to say anything bad about other shows, but some shows they really cram you in there like sardines, and you have a nice chap stop by your table or a couple stop and they want to order a portrait or whatever, and you've created a traffic jam, and I've never felt that here. It's just awesome. But you know, like you were saying though, I think it's a great time to be alive. I never would have imagined as a child going to see the Avengers movie, going to see the horrible Fantastic Four movie, going to see any of those things that I never thought it would ever happen. You know, you're kind of like lonely when you're reading comic books. You bond with those characters because you don't think anyone else. Like, I'm as close with Ben Grimm as anybody on Earth can be, and he's my man. He's the guy for me. Like he's the representation of all my pain and sorrow as a kid, you know, on the page, because he had all that, and I really. But you feel alone. You feel like you don't have that to share. But now you look around here and everybody's into it. It's an amazing time to be alive. Like, it really is.
You're absolutely right.
When I was in school and studying at Sheridan College, my teachers all kept me away from doing, you know, the Viking stuff and the fantasy stuff. They said, you're never going to make any money. You're never going to, you know, it's not what the industry wants. And then the minute I graduate, we have this massive pop culture tidal wave. We have the Lord of the Rings films. We have the Star Wars films. We have the X-Men films. We have, you know, like all these things happened right about, it's like the moment they said those words and I left school with a portfolio full of mismatched stuff for whatever purpose, it was meaningless to me. I wanted to do this and I was told not to do this, and if I had just stuck to my guns, I would have been doing it. So that's my advice. Stick to your guns. Just do it, man.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive. We gotta hold on to this. Who knows how long it's gonna last?
And you're absolutely right. And the fact that technology is caught up to the virtual world that these Marvel and DC characters live in, they can actually create it to a point where it's actually looking real.
Absolutely.
You know, we couldn't have done this type of special effects 20 years ago. So I'm glad they held off until now, where we can actually make Hulk look awesome, like in the Avengers.
And they did. They did. You know, like.
Now, I'm totally getting my geek on. Do you have a website that you'd like to promote?
I have a very basic art gallery website. It's just MikeRooth.com, and it's ROOTH.com. And it's just a very basic kind of gallery website. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a web savvy person, so it doesn't get updated as much as it could. However, if you want to see my stuff on a regular basis, just follow me on Twitter. I'm Uncouth Rooth at Twitter, and
there's a link on your website for that as well.
There probably isn't, but I should get my web faculties together. But yeah, Uncouth Rooth on Twitter, and I'm usually posting 2 or 3 things a day. Like, I'm drawing all the time. So
well, best of luck, and I hope you keep living the dream.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.